Hello, live stream about vocabulary. I am your teacher, Robin Shaw. I hope everyone can hear me and see me well. Today, we're going to be talking about how to contrast in your writing and, of course, your IELTS writing. To be more specific, contrast is very important. So, we're going to talk about that in this lesson. It's a very important lesson. You're going to learn a lot of vocabulary and how to use that vocabulary. So please continue to watch. I'm just moving my keyboard here. Let's check the chat to see which students showed up. Of course, not everyone watches this live. If you're not watching this live, it's okay. Please watch it and do the homework whenever you see this video. I see Layla is here. She's expressing happiness. Wow, we have another lesson about vocabulary. Yes, we do. Anna Maria is here. Hello. And Sleepwalker is here. Urdu English with Said Tahiri is here. What is Urdu English? Okay, so let's get started as students start coming in. Contrast. Let's make me a little smaller there. That's better. So we're going to learn 10 transition words to show contrast, and that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to learn the vocabulary. We're going to do a vocabulary check. So I'm going to check to make sure you know it. And of course, at the end, I'm going to give you some homework to practice using this vocabulary. And here are the 10 words we are going to study in this lesson. Number 1, but. 2, yet. 3, however. 4, contrast. 5, in contrast. 6, in comparison. 7, on the other hand. 8, conversely. And 9, on the contrary. And 10, whereas. So of these 10, which ones do you don't know? Tell me in the chat right now as we wait for more students to come in. Which one of these, you could just tell me the number, which numbers you don't know. Sita Ekmeki, hello. Sorry if I did not pronounce your name correctly. Ramdan Ahmad, hello, Mr. Robin. Good night. Good evening, maybe is better. As long as I wanted to know the contrast words. Sleepwalker doesn't know 6, in comparison. Well, that's not too difficult. 8, conversely. 6, in comparison. Conversely, we are going to study all of that in this lesson, and you're going to practice it. Not only are we going to practice it later in this lesson, but you're going to have homework. All right. So what is contrast? Contrast. To show a difference between two or more people, things, or ideas when they are compared. Okay, so you are comparing, but you are not focusing on what is the same. You are focusing on what's different. And for the IELTS writing, we're not really, you can be focusing on people or things, but mainly we're focusing on ideas. And we have one idea and we have another idea, and what's making them different. We have to contrast what's different between them, and we have to explain it. And the words we're going to learn in this lesson will help you to explain contrast. And remember, with transition words, they help your essay. They help the organization of your essay, the understanding of your essay, and ultimately your band score will increase if you use transition words effectively. So all of these words you learn, please use them in your IELTS essay. Contrast. Okay. And of course, pay attention, as always, to the grammar, to the spelling. All right, these words should not be spelled incorrectly. You must learn the spelling of these words. Remember, spelling is important for your homework, also on the real IELTS test. So please make sure you have proper spelling and punctuation. Learning about transition words means you also learn the punctuation. So grammar, spelling, punctuation, and I guess the overall usage of when to use these words, it all goes together and it has to be perfect when you're doing your writing. A lot of students, especially in the homework, they don't care about the spelling or punctuation. They just put their answer. Well, it's wrong. Spelling, punctuation is part of the score. So please do better on your homework. Treat my homework like the real IELTS test. Excuse me. All right, we're just going to start with the easiest and probably most common one, but very common, probably the most common conjunction transition word to show contrast, right? In the beginning of a sentence, there's some idea, and then at the end of the sentence, there's a different idea or the opposite idea, and we're going to use but. But remember, focus on the spelling. Spelling's easy, B-U-T. Focus on the punctuation. So we're going to talk a little bit about punctuation in a moment. And Layla has a question. As I remember, you don't prefer your students to start with their sentence with but, so we will see it today. Yes, we will see that today. We will see some sentences start with but. Okay, so she became president. That's happening. But, okay, so she became president. Maybe that's a positive thing, but the citizens were angry. That's a negative thing. So we're contrasting the positive with the negative. Let's move on. The company had more profit, but its stock decreased. So again, a positive thing and then a negative thing. Company had more profit, but the stock decreased. And I got to move off the screen here. Let's see. Let's move me. Oh, no. More people are recycling. That's a good thing, but we got to contrast. Something's different with the result. The climate is still rapidly changing, and rapidly means quickly changing. I know English grammar well, but I'm not sure about speaking skills. Well, this is more of a writing lesson, but I will try to point out any speaking tips as I go along. Sleepwalker. All right, but it's easy. I'm going to focus on punctuation because punctuation is confusing. Does but use a comma? Or but doesn't use a comma? Well, but sometimes uses a comma, sometimes doesn't use a comma. So it's very important you understand what an independent clause is. So an independent clause in a sentence, an independent clause, like if you have a sentence like this sentence, grammar is boring, but it is necessary to learn. We have two independent clauses. That means the first part can be a sentence by itself. You can say grammar is boring. That's a sentence. And the second part can be a sentence by itself. It is necessary to learn. That can be a sentence. So we have two independent clauses. We can connect them with but we use a comma. Now, if we say grammar is boring but necessary to learn, grammar is boring. That works, but necessary to learn has no subject. Okay, so in the first sentence, it Grammar is the subject, but in the second sentence, there's no subject. If there's no subject, there's no comma. Okay, so I can't spend too much time teaching when to use a comma, but hopefully this helps. Studying grammar is hard sometimes, but interesting. So again, interesting is not a sentence. So we would just use but without a comma. But grammar is boring if you study it every day. Okay, here we are we're starting our sentence with but. You can start a sentence with but, that's okay. But I recommend you try not to start a sentence with but in your IELTS essay. I would say use a different contrast word that we're going to learn today beyond but. There's a lot of words. But of course, grammar is boring if you study it every day. Now, in this case, that of course is called an interrupter. It interrupts the sentence. So if you say, but grammar is boring if you study it every day, that's a sentence. But we are putting an interrupter there, some extra information. In that case, we're going to use comma, comma around that. But again, you can use but to begin a sentence, but I would say try to use different vocabulary. Now, we're studying with but as a contrast word, and but will probably be in your essay, but it's good to try to use different words other than but. Upgrade your vocabulary. So that's what we're going to do in this lesson. I guess we have to use a comma always with but, not always, not always. If you wrote your IELTS essay and you put a comma before but, I don't think they're going to care that much. I was putting comma before but because I don't know that there's a difference, as I do often, and many native speakers do that. But let's try to improve our writing. Let's get better at writing. So let's know the rules and write better. But again, it's not a critical issue you need to worry about too much. No comma if no subject. That I don't want to say that's an absolute rule, but that's a good guide to look at. Okay, let's look at yet. Yet is very similar to but. We use it the same way. Grammar is boring, yet it is necessary to learn. Grammar is boring, yet necessary to learn. Again, if it has a subject, use that comma. Studying grammar is hard sometimes, yet interesting. My grammar knowledge has not increased yet. Okay, these are the ways we're going to use yet. Of course, the last way is not the same as but. It just means not happening yet. So the first three sentences are similar, almost the same, exactly the same way to show contrast as but the last sentence means not happening at this point. All right, let's move on to however. We talked about however in previous live streams, so I think a lot of you already know, but I will go over it again. He always saved his money. However, again, it's similar to but or yet. However, he gave money to the poor. So we want to show contrast here. He saves his money, but another on the kind of opposite way, he is giving money to the poor. Now, on your essay, you could say he always saved his money, but he gave money to the poor. You could use but again, let's try to use this new vocabulary. How a new vocabulary, however, is better than but. Okay, so I would say start practicing. However, I've never used yet that way, like but. Uh, I would say it's more a spoken. It can be written, of course, it's written, but yet is special. And I can't. I know there is a slight difference between yet and but unfortunately, I can't go into detail in this video yet, ever. I'll do another video in the future on that, on the nuance of yet. It has a little bit of extra nuance, but that's not important for this video right now. The economy was growing well. However, unemployment was rising. Okay, so we are starting a sentence with however here. So again, the economy going well, but unemployment was rising. So we have a positive, but in contrast, we have this negative thing happening too. So the first sentence we use however in the middle. Notice the punctuation, semicolon, however, comma. Second sentences, we have it at the beginning, however, comma. Learning the punctuation is also learning, learning how to use it also means learning the punctuation. Do native speakers use however commonly while speaking? Yeah, we can. Of course, but is more common because it's easier to say, it's quicker. However, I think, however, is a little more formal, certainly. But I don't want to make a rule that native speakers don't use that. Anyone can use that at any time. It sounds perfectly fine, but I would say it's a little more formal. I'm always careful not to make mistakes. However, they happen sometimes. Yeah. We all make mistakes, even me. Even me. Maybe you'll find a mistake in this presentation. However, sounds much better than bit. How about but? The economy was growing well. However, unemployment was rising. All right. So what I did with sentences 2 and sentences 3, same meaning, just the middle sentence there. I started with however, and then the last sentence, I just put it in the middle. Same meaning. Same meaning. Here we are beginning a sentence. Now, when you're beginning a sentence, please use a comma. However rich he was, he always gave money to the poor. And here we have the interrupter. Again, it's kind of extra information added. The president, however, was a good teacher. So the president was a good teacher, a good leader. Sorry, the president was a good leader is the sentence. We are inserting the however as a contrast. We don't know the previous sentence, so maybe the previous sentence could say something like, the president did not have much support. So something negative. And I could say the president, however, was a good leader. Something positive. I can start this sentence by saying, however, comma, the president was a good leader. That is possible. There's, when you're using however, you can see there's many, wherever you can put it many places in the sentence, but please keep the grammar and the punctuation. Here I put it at the end. The president was a good leader, however. Can even go at the end. And I think I have one more. Nope. Okay, so yeah, we can stick however many possible places. Wherever you stick it, wherever you put it, make sure you have the correct punctuation. So Urdu English. So Robin, however, is a very good teacher. So Urdu, you're missing a comma after Robin, and this is contrast. This is contrast to what? I want to know the previous sentence. So maybe you said Robin is old. Robin, however, is a very good teacher. Something like that. Does the meaning of however change when it comes such an extra information in the middle? It can. I don't know every situation. I don't want to make an exact absolute rule, but certainly it is a contrast word. So it's not always a contrast word, but in the cases I'm showing here, it is a contrast word. It is showing contrast to something. Romnan, I'm not talking about. I am. This is not a. We're talking about. Sorry, Rodan. You can save that for another live stream. We're not talking about that topic right now. If you have any questions about, however, let me know. All right, let's look at just the word contrast. So we're talking about contrast. Let's just look at the word contrast. Now, if you look at the title, it says IELTS Vocabulary Contrast, noun, verb. It can be a noun, it can be a verb. So if you contrast some of her early writing with her later work, you can see just how much she improved. All right, let's take a look again. If you contrast, so comparing, but looking for the differences. You could use the word compare. If you compare some of her early work with her later work, you could just see how much she improved. But we're using the word contrast because we want to focus on it's a word to focus on the differences. But you're perfectly okay to say compare here. So if you contrast some of her early writing with her later work, you can see just how much she improved. So her early writing, her later work, contrast, comparing, focusing on the difference, you can see, wow, she improved a lot. The employee policies of the two companies contrast significantly. All right, here we go. One company has a policy, another company has a policy, and when you compare, contrast, looking for the differences, they contrast significantly. Again, significant. You don't want to say a lot in your IELTS essay. Don't use a lot. Use a word like significantly. So there's many differences. They contrast significantly. We compared them, and there are many differences. And let's look at one more. There is an obvious contrast between the cultures of East and West. So when we compare them, there are many differences. Sir, contrast means compare. Yeah, we are compare and focusing on the differences. So that brings us to in contrast, which is a good transition word. In contrast. This is you could use the word contrast fine in essay. As another word for compare, you can use contrast, but our transition in contest. Oh, this is good to use. This is a good transition expression to use in your essay. I feel that contrast is a synonym of compare and different. Yeah, well, yeah, there's all of these words are synonyms. Everything in this lesson today is going to be a synonym. Some of them match exactly, some of them are in the same family. All right, let's look at this one. It says the North suffered there's significant again. The North suffered a significant amount of hurricane damage. In contrast, the South suffered very little hurricane damage. So the North suffered damage. So in opposite way that doesn't match, the South suffered very little hurricane damage. Can you use but in this sentence? Yes, you can say but. Can you use yet? Yes, you can use yet. Can you use however? Yes, you can use however in this sentence, right? These are all showing, these are all words to express this information and this information when compared don't match. So it is possible, but again, we're trying to improve our vocabulary and use these more precise transition expressions. Is contrast? It's not an antonym. An antonym in contrast would be similarly or something like that. But contrast doesn't mean antonym. Canada's budget was late. In contrast, the American budget was early. All right. So again, the information in the first sentence and the information in the second sentence are not the same when we compare. So we use in contrast. Again, you could use yet, but, however. Let's use in contrast to show. Use in contrast to show there's a big difference. There's a big difference. Late and early. That's a big difference. The opposite. Young physicians, of course, a physician is a doctor. Young physicians were eager to retire early. Retired physicians, in contrast, looked forward to returning to their jobs. So here we have in contrast as an interrupter. We're putting it in the middle of a sentence. We could put it at the beginning. In contrast, retired physicians look forward to returning to their jobs. But maybe for emphasis, they put it in the middle of a sentence. It's going to use comma, comma. It's that extra information we're inserting in the middle of a sentence. So young doctors, they wanted to retire early, but the old retired doctors, they wanted to go back to work. So it didn't match. The young and the old ideas did not match. In contrast, yeah, we're looking at the opposite or information that doesn't match. It doesn't have to be opposite. It just doesn't match. So this pen is blue, but this pen is white. Or I could say, so this pen is blue. In contrast, this pen is white. I probably wouldn't express the differences that way, but blue pen and white pen are not opposites. They don't match. They're different. So it can be an opposite, or it could just be a big difference. Thank you, Urdu. Okay, thank you. All right, in contrast, let's move on to in comparison. Now, at the top, it says IELTS vocabulary. in comparison to, in comparison with. So you can say, here's some collocation here. In comparison to, or in comparison with, both are accepted to use both expressions. So in comparison is comparing. It's just, similar to in contrast, except I would say the level is a little lower than in contrast. But it depending on the sentence, all of these words really depend on the information you're giving. Is it opposite information? Is it very similar? Is very different? So I would say use in contrast to show big differences, and in comparison could also be used to show big differences, but it's more flexible if there's little differences. I noticed it shouldn't be opposite, but they must be different information. Yeah, it can be opposite or just different. Some students passed the listening part of the test. In contrast, other students were better at writing. Hmm. So here, I would say, in comparison is a better word to use. You can use in contrast, but as I said, some students pass the listening part. You're comparing the listening, and you're comparing students at listening and students at writing. So I would say it's more. This would probably be better in comparison sentence. So let's look at my sentence here. The students at the all-female high school scored high on their exams. In comparison, the students at the all-male high school scored lower on their exams. I could use in contrast here, but in contrast might be a little strong. I just want to compare it and show that there is a difference. In contrast will highlight a big difference. In comparison will highlight more that we're just comparing and it's different. I always found in contrast a lot of it's going to be in any formal writing. All of these words are in formal writing. My listening skills with the Australian accent are lower in comparison to American accent. Yep. More comparing. Yes, it's still needed to Sleepwalker, there are nuances to each word in English, and it's hard to teach nuance. All I can do is teach the basics and later on focus on nuance, because the nuance comes into play each situation. Every situation can have a different nuance. So Bahrain produces a lot of oil. In contrast, Saudi produces much more. So again, I would say you could say that, but I would use in comparison, because they both. So here's a good example. If you said Bahrain produces a lot of oil, in contrast, Korea produces no oil. So that's a good contrast. A lot of oil, no oil. But you're saying Bahrain produces a lot and Saudi Arabia produces more. You can use in contrast, but I would say this is a good place to use in comparison also. Their budget is small in comparison with the other company. So we're comparing two companies, they're different, and their budget is small. And their budget is small in comparison to the other company. So again, in comparison with, in comparison to, both of those work. Not similarities, there's still differences. There's still differences. Nothing here. This lesson, we're not saying they're the same. We are always comparing, and there's a difference. All right. Let's move on to on one hand. Now, some people will say on one hand, and some people will say on the one hand. Uh, Now, I heard both ways are okay, but I did read that on the one hand is technically the correct expression. But if you said on one hand, I don't think you would lose points at all. But let's use on the one hand. So, on the one hand, so looking at something this way, if you're going to use on the one hand, you have to use on the other hand. So, on the one hand, this idea, and on the other hand, this idea. We are comparing and we are contrasting. We are focusing on the difference. So the sentence says, on the one hand, a message of change was needed in order to win new voters. So on one hand, we need a message of change to win new voters. On the other hand, the candidate already had enough support from his base. So his base is his base supporters. The people are going to vote for him. So on the one hand, he can get more voters if he has a message of change. But on the other hand, he has enough voters. He doesn't need to get new voters from his support. So if you use on the one hand, be sure to use on the other hand. In Indonesia, a lot of people are used to the Indonesian language in comparison to American or English. Well, America speaks English, so there's no American language. So you'd say in Indonesia, a lot of people are used to the Indonesian language in comparison to English. I understand Robin's speech. Speech should be EE, much better in comparison to. We need to or with. In comparison to other native speakers, in comparison with other native speakers. I feel there's a difference, but I can't explain it and describe it in English. I mean, between in contrast, and but. Well, in contrast, you want to, let's just say in contrast is you want to really show a strong difference. I always found, on the other hand, in a lot of journals. Yes, every word I teach, you're going to find in the journals, because these are the words we use for formal writing. These are the words you have to use on your IELTS test, on your IELTS writing. On the one hand, economic recovery was possible. On the other hand, many vulnerable groups would suffer. Okay, so on one hand, we have economic recovery is possible. On the other hand, many people will suffer. So again, we're expressing opposite or conflicting ideas. I always see they use just on the other hand without on the one hand. Well, Anna Maria, yes, that is possible. And I was going to teach that, but I just want to get my students first practicing on the one hand, on the other hand, but certainly for advanced users, you can just use on the other hand. I was using only on the other hand without on one hand in the beginning. Yeah, that's possible, Layla. So you can keep doing that. Just for this lesson, some people might not know the full expression. So the full expression is on the one hand, this idea, on the other hand, this idea. And certainly, if you are familiar with this expression, uh, a lot of people will just use on the other hand. So you have this idea, I want to eat pizza tonight. On the other hand, I got to watch my weight or something like that. So, Anna Maria Layla, you are correct, but I wanted to teach the full expression before students start just focusing on one. On the one hand, you teach us wheel. You got to say well. On another hand, the expression is not another hand. On the other hand, we don't learn quickly. On the one hand, first generation biofuel is long lasting. On the other hand, second generation biofuel is more you don't need the long lasting. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, it's good that you guys are trying out some sentences here. That's how we learn. All right, let's move on to conversely. Are you guys ready for conversely? Let's read the sentence. It says, poor health is accepted as part of normal aging. Conversely, youth is depicted as a time of vitality and good health. So, conversely, again, a synonym of in comparison, in contrast, however, but it just means in an opposite way, in a very different way. So we think poor health is part of normal aging, and in the opposite view, young people, youth is depicted, shown of vitality and good health. So we just use conversely. And everyone, please repeat after me now. Conversely, which is the same meaning as in contrast. Focusing on this one's mainly focusing on an opposite idea. I've just known conversely a few weeks ago, but I don't know how to use it properly. Well, keep watching. Nice to meet you conversely. Oh, is that no? What do you conversely? Conversely, I don't think anyone says that. I'm gonna check. No, I cannot find that. That's not acceptable, Anna Maria. Conversely, we contrast. We're focusing on the opposite. Oh, you're greeting conversely. Nice to meet you. Comma. I taught you about comma. You should write nice to meet you, comma. I got to make sure I spell it right. Conversely. That's how you would express nice to meet you, comma, because you're giving it a name. Like nice to meet you, comma, Robin. Nice to meet you, conversely. Then I would understand perfectly what you were trying to say. Commas are important too. Always conversely, right there, we need a comma. We do need that comma. The students were improving their scores with extra study. Conversely, their mental health was suffering. So, one idea, the students were improving their scores with extra study, but the opposite way or a different way, their mental health is going down, suffering. Scores up, mental health down. The beginners want to get good results quickly. Conversely, experienced students know that is impossible. Yep. Mhm. Now I'm going with the nuance. What would a native speaker say here? I don't think conversely would be the best word, because conversely is. I'm gonna say there's a stronger focus on the opposite effect. So the beginners want to get good results. I would say conversely, beginners never get good results quickly. In comparison, might be a better word to use there. We should start to remember and apply the grammar. Grammar is uncountable that we learned a few weeks ago. You have to make notes and follow everything. AIDS is a very dangerous disease. Conversely, COVID is a troublesome disease. I would use it in comparison there. Because you'd say AIDS is a very dangerous disease. Conversely, is there a positive disease? So, Ramdan, Ahmed, this is a good place to use in comparison because you're comparing two diseases. AIDS is very dangerous, but COVID is just troublesome. It would not be conversely, not opposite. My English is progressing very well. Conversely, my weight is getting low. Hmm. My English is progressing very well. Conversely, my weight is getting low because of no time to eat. Is it okay? Yeah, but it's the way you're writing your sentences. My English is progressing very well. Conversely, uh, it doesn't really match to compare English to weight. I know the second example here is student scores and mental health. So that might be my fault for this example. I would try to get more things that match as opposites for conversely. You're creative. Keep going. Send your brother Bara from Palestine. Okay, welcome, Bara. I am speaking English conversely. No, this does not work. Mitar per mouth. That doesn't work. Definitely. Okay. On the contrary, how many do we have left? On the contrary, two more. So on the contrary, and then we have one more after this. Then we're going to go into the check. We're going to ask 10 questions, and you have to give me the answer. Type of quiz. I tried to express my thought, but I think it's a little confusing. Yeah, these, as we're going up in difficulty, they can be a little more confusing to use. Again, as Sleepwalker pointed out, there's a lot of nuance sometimes, case by case. That just today is a starting point, Layla. Okay, introduction to these expressions. Then we work from there. I wanted to spend time with my friends. I don't like Sleepwalker conversely, not in conversely. Conversely is really formal, so it doesn't work well with casual sentences. So this is formal. You don't say conversely to your mom. You don't say conversely to your friend at the bar, at the gym, on the street. This is very formal writing. So, Sleepwalker, would you say I wanted to spend time with my friends? That's a very casual sentence. You're never going to write that in an academic journal. You're not going to write that in your IELTS essay. So, conversely seems a little awkward, putting such a formal word with such a casual statement. My first time here, sir. Good day. Welcome from Nigeria. Listening to native speakers more would help to catch the nuances for sure. Reading more, getting more input from speaking or listening and reading. Certainly, you would catch the nuances more. All right. On the contrary, many people believe the unemployment rate is increasing. On the contrary, the statistics show overall unemployment decreasing. So again, doesn't match. We have contrast. The information in sentence one, is the opposite. The opposite is true. So think on the contrary, again, a very formal expression. You are saying the first sentence information is not true. All right. On the contrary, you are saying the information before is not true. The opposite is true. So many people believe the unemployment rate is increasing. On the contrary, the statistics show overall unemployment decreasing. That is the truth. So the information is not true. You want to show that. The opposite is true. I had to check surfactant. What is that? All right, that's chemistry terminology. I don't even know how to say that. Surfactant has a two group that's polar and non-polar. On the contrary, surfactants can unite each droplet. Well, I'm not sure what the word surfactants mean because that's a chemistry substance. But if you're showing that the first sentence is wrong, then that is correct with a little bit of grammar problem. Informal English doesn't use complex words. On the contrary, we should use them for writing essays. No, because the first sentence is true. So informal English doesn't use complex words. Yeah, that could be true. So on the contrary, no. So informal English, you should say informal English. You should say because informal English doesn't use complex words, we don't need to learn them. Okay, make a statement like that. Because English doesn't use complex words, we don't need to learn them. On the contrary, we do need to learn them. We should use them for writing essays. Is there any issue on the other monitor? Yeah, the issue is I got to check what the word means, surfactants. The crime problem has not disappeared. On the contrary, it seems to be becoming worse. All right, so the crime problem has not disappeared. It's still there, but on the contrary, we are saying it is there and it is becoming worse. So although these are similar, we want to highlight that it is really bad. On the contrary, it seems to be becoming worse again. Complete laboratory equipment according to data. On the contrary, incomplete according to student. Okay. Don't understand the sentence. Maybe start off, Ramadan, with an easier sentence. It's for me to understand. So you want to use on the contrary to show the previous information is not true or not telling us enough. So the first sentence, it's not true. The second sentence is crime problem has not disappeared. That's not enough information. On the contrary, it seems to be becoming worse. So yeah, I agree. It didn't disappear, but I also want to share that it is becoming worse. He thought himself a champion. On the contrary, there are the same guys all over the world. Okay. Yeah, that could work. He thought he was a champion. On the contrary, he's not a champion. All right, let's get to our last vocabulary word, whereas. Various devices are getting more and more popular. Technology is developing every day. On the contrary, the people are getting addicted to them, which is bad. No. Again, various. Okay. So you want to use it as an exaggerate or giving the second usage. Let's see. Various devices are getting more and more popular. Technology is developing every day. So the second sentence, you're expressing an addiction. Something is bad. But in the first sentence, you did not express something good other than popular. Does popular mean good? So if you said various devices are helping people every day. So if you said various devices are getting more and more popular, technology is developing and helping, giving that positive thing, then on the contrary would work better. But on the contrary, we're going to focus on the negative. This is true. So the first statement can be true, but it's not giving all the information. So, but I would say it's important you make the first sentence more positive and then show us the opposite opinion too. These are hard to teach. I know everyone's watching and you're like, well, For some of you, this is a lot of information, and it's difficult for me to teach because there's so many different situations we can use these words, and I'm not even showing you every situation, right? I'm just trying to show you the basic, and even that can be a little difficult. But we have homework and we have a quiz, so let's get to it. It's still unclear enough to know the nuances between them, so it's a little hard to create sentences using such as on the contrary, conversely. Layla, it all starts with you starting to write sentences. All right. It doesn't start with I'm not going to write a sentence until I completely understand. No, 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 no. It starts with you trying to write sentences. And then I tell you, you're right or wrong. If you're wrong, you try again. But there's no situation in learning where it's like I don't understand, so I'm not going to try. Right? Again, Ramnan, I don't understand the sentence. Urdu, thank you. I thought we could use some of them, like on the other hand, in contrast, and however, with informal. Yeah, you can. You could use all of these in writing, but in speaking, yeah. However, is probably the highest. I'll go back to the beginning later on, and I'll point out which are mainly for speaking, which are mainly for writing. Various devices are helping people every day. On the contrary, yeah, that's a little more of how we would use on the contrary. So these things are good, but on the contrary, no, these things are bad. So, but what would work better, and Sleepwalker, you're going to hate me, is in contrast. In contrast would work better here. Unless you reworded your sentence, you could say, he thinks various devices are helping. So his opinion or her opinion is various devices are helping people on the day. But on the contrary, I don't agree with that opinion. On the contrary, people are getting addicted to them because the way you word it now, various devices are helping people every day. That you're stating that as a fact. And on the contrary, I think on the contrary would work better if someone has an opinion. So if we go back to my second sentence here, the crime problem has not disappeared. That would I should have expressed that more as someone's opinion, and then you are reacting to that as on the contrary, it's getting worse. I'm working, so I cannot watch the for this. You have time to make a comment. No, I'm glad to learn. Yeah. Reading English is easy to learn. On the contrary, practice is easier to learn. Yeah, this could be an opinion. Okay, Ramnan, that's good. I suggest you to visit Saudi Arabia in the summer. However, the heat is super high. So I suggest that is not a false statement. You know, now that I see the problem word is on the contrary, I wish I had more examples. Let's see if I can get a perfect example on the contrary. And I'll just make one up. Give me a moment. I'm writing it in the chat. All right. So in the chat, I wrote the employees said the boss was very strict. So the opinion of the employees, the boss was very strict. On the contrary, I found him to be a generous man. Okay, so I found it opposite. He was very generous. So I did not. Their opinion was not true for me. People used to wake up the contrary. I would say in contrast. So people stick to opinions. So people make it opinion. So people think you should wake up after 7. On the contrary, I think you should wake up at 4. He's not that bad person that they want to make him out to be. On the contrary, he's a model to follow. That's similar to mine. Yeah. Minister Booster Spiritual Wilguns Bernadotte. Contrary will have other meanings. I did not talk about other meanings. Be careful or do. Every word I teach in this lesson may have additional meanings that I did not go over. Let's just focus on the meanings I give in this lesson. Hello, Lavanya. People's lives are getting more comfortable. We can get anything in a minute of a click. On the contrary, monoline. Yep, this would be more correct. These days, most people became a. Yep, that is correct. Now you left on the contrary. You're going back to in comparison. All right, let's go to whereas. This is the last one. Whereas, meaning, again, comparing comparing and contrasting two pieces of information. So some of the studies show positive results, whereas other studies do not. So we want to show that although this information showed this, other information did not. So some of the studies show positive results where others do not. So whereas should be easier because it's similar to but or yet. In Los Angeles, a chief cause of pollution is paved road dust. Whereas, contrasting in San Diego, it's smoke from fireplaces. So again, whereas, very similar to but. I love drinking coffee every day. On the contrary, British people drink tea. Yes, but I think I would like in contrast would work better there. And again, that's kind of a casual sentence talking about tea. So if we were speaking, I love drinking coffee every day. On the contrary. So again, I love drinking coffee. It's not really an opinion. So let's use on the contrary for opinions. All right, let's get into the checkup one. What word? We could use many words here. I just put one, but which words could we use here? This is a cheap and simple process. There are dangers. Uh, this is a cheap and simple process, period. Something, there are dangers. What word goes there? Write it in the chat. And remember to like the video. Everyone right now, take a moment, hit like. There are advantages to live in the city, whereas there are many different disadvantages. I would add an also or to the end of that. But yeah. This is a cheap and simple process, but I'm not going to start my sentence with but. I didn't do that. I didn't start my sentence with yet. You could. I don't like that. I would recommend you don't do that, but certainly I'm not going to do that in my conversely. Yeah, that's not the word I used. Think simple. You guys you're trying to jump into the bigger words right away. This is not in contrast. I'm talking about one thing. I'm not talking about two things. So in contrast doesn't work. It works well with two things. However, yeah, you guys are thinking too big right away. So I'm starting off easy. However, this is a cheap and simple process. However, there are dangers. So remember, I don't like to start my sentences with but, and I don't like to start my sentences with yet. And another one we could use is whereas. I don't like to start my sentences with whereas. You can start your sentences with those, but I would say you start your sentences with however. That's a good one to use there. However, there are dangers. And of course, you can make it one sentence with putting however in the middle. Let's look at the next one. Many people thought the cat should be awarded a medal for being a hero. Many people thought that the idea was ridiculous. What might I use there? On the contrary, that could work. So clearly an opposite idea. Many people, there's an opinion. They thought this cat as a hero should get a medal, but an opposite opinion. The idea is ridiculous. So yeah, yes. All of these could work, but so Urdu, we don't want to start our sentence with but. But is a conjunction. It works well in the middle of a sentence, but let's not start a sentence with but. So all of those could work. However, on the contrary, on the other hand, in contrast, the word I choose was conversely, to help you learn conversely. And I see a lot of you were scared to use conversely, or you don't like that word yet. So so on the contrary, in contrasts, we're comparing very different But on the contrary, and conversely, we're going to focus more on the opposite. The opposite. Yeah, your choice is okay. No, many words can work here. Many words can work here. So I just wanted to show conversely good at expressing an opposite idea. Now, Anna Maria, you say let's make conversely an ubiquitous word. Ubiquitous starts with the Y. Ubiquitous, so we cannot say an. We have to use a ubiquitous word. A ubiquitous word. Blank, I want to go to the party, but blank, I ought to be studying. On the one hand, I want to go to the party, but on the other hand, I ought to be studying. And yep, that will be my answer. On the one hand, I want to go to the party, but on the other hand, I ought to be studying. On the one hand, on the other hand. On the one hand, and on the other hand. On one hand, on the other hand. Yes. On one hand, on another hand, no. Urdu, no. You cannot say another hand. We have one hand. On the one hand, on the other hand. You cannot say another hand. Number 4. The second half of the game was dull with the first half. Dull means boring. Sleepwalker uses in comparison. The second half of the game was dull in comparison with the first half. The second half of the game was dull, but with the first half. No, but cannot work here. The second half of the game was dull in contrast with the first half. I would use in contrast to the first half. Layla is in comparison again. In contrast with the first half. In contrast. Mm-hmm. In contrast with is more common in UK. So in contrast can work there, yes. So we have in comparison, in contrast. Layla says, I feel the sentence is not complete. It's complete. The word I use is in comparison. So we're just comparing the first half or the second half of the game, the first half of the game. And yeah, the second half of the game was dull, boring in comparison with the first half. So I'm comparing them. What's different? This one was boring and this one was better. So Sleepwalker, you are correct. I was pretending you gave a stupid answer, but you gave the correct answer. And Layla too, you said in comparison. That's correct. You could say in contrast. Oh, I gave it away. You got the size anyway. It's easy to fall into a trap. Hopefully you did not see it. Yet hard to get out again. That works perfectly fine. But Yet. No comma needed. We don't need, there's no comma here. So definitely we could use but or yet. If we used however, we're going to need some punctuation there. If we used whereas, we're going to need some punctuation and a subject. So without a comma, we can use but. There's no, yeah, Lavania's cheating. Okay, let's go to number 6. Ooh. Expenditures in the military increased this year. Now, keep in mind, in my examples, I don't use easy English, right? Usually in my examples, I'm using a very formal writing. So keep that in mind. I'm not using easy sentences. I'm using difficult sentences in my examples to help you learn new vocabulary and get used to, how to write these informal sentences. So expenditures, how much we're spending in the military increased this year. Blank expenditure on education decreased this year. So we have an increase and a decrease. It sounds like opposites. In contrast, that could work. In contrast, that could work. Whereas can work, but yeah. I Urdu, I would suggest not starting the sentence with whereas. Whereas is good in the middle of a sentence. Yeah, whereas is not a good opener. Yeah, starting a sentence with whereas is a little more complicated. We're not going to use it this way. Uh, so I'm not going to accept whereas here. On the contrary, again, you're kind of saying the first sentence is false. The first sentence is correct. So on the contrary means this information is wrong. So expenditures in the military increased this year. You would say, on the contrary, expenditures in the military decreased this year. So on the contrary is not going to work at all. Conversely, that would work. Let's see what I use. I don't even remember what I chose. I just chose in comparison. So I would use in comparison. I would use conversely. I would use however. However could work. In contrast, you could use in contrast. It all depends on the context of what you're saying. Because I'm talking about military and education, so they're not really opposites, and I'm just comparing them. Military increased, education decreased. If used however, that's fine. That's fine. It was not a good thing. It was a huge mistake. This one might be difficult. Is it okay if we use any one, the last ones? Well, I don't understand the question. The last one, you could use multiple, but not everyone. You could use however. So keep this in mind. Both of these sentences, it was not a good thing. Bad. It was a huge mistake. It's bad. They're not opposites. You're saying the same thing. It's not a good thing. It was a huge mistake. So it's not in contrast. Because it's not a good thing. It was a huge mistake. That's very similar. Yeah, you students are going to hate me. Oh, we do have the on the contrary, Ramdan, okay. Minister Booster, on the contrary. On the contrary. So yeah, you guys, what? I hate IELTS. I hate on the contrary. Well, for your homework, on the contrary would be a good one to practice because this is the weakest one. It's hard to understand. So I recommend you practice in the homework a lot more. So it was not a good thing. So remember, it's not a good thing. I'm saying this statement is false. On the contrary, it was a huge mistake. So it was not a good thing is too simple of an explanation. Actually, it was a huge mistake. So on the contrary. So I'm going to go back to on the contrary. So again, look at the second paragraph, the second sentence. The crime problem has not disappeared. That means there's a crime problem. But on the contrary, seems to be becoming worse. So I agree there's a crime problem, but this sentence there's not enough information. There's a crime problem, but it's becoming worse. So that was similar to that sentence. It was not a good thing. On the contrary, it was, a very bad, terrible thing. It was a huge mistake. On the contrary. Some people like to eat meat. Others hate it. This one should be easy because there's multiple answers here. Notice the comma. This one's tricky, yes. Sir, if I say we do understand in our own language, what is but yet, however, they can be conjunctions. I'm not sure the question, Ramna. Sorry. I don't know when I use this one and when should I use that one. Well, that's where the practice comes. Nobody said this was easy, Layla. I did not begin this video saying, this is easy. No, these are words you have to learn. On the contrary, in comparison, yep, that could work. Whereas, that could work. Conversely, that could work, but that could work. Nope, but can't work. Well, others hate it. Yeah. Yeah, that could work. Because the comma, I had to think about the comma. Yet others, yeah, all of those can work. Which word do you think I used? I don't even remember which word I used. I used whereas. So remember in the IELTS essay, yes, but can work. Yes, yet can work. But let's use a better word. Let's use whereas. Okay, let's improve our vocabulary here. Show the people, look, I know, I can go beyond be but. I can go beyond yet. I can use whereas. I can use in contrast. I can use conversely. Sorry, sir. I mean, we do understand our own language, okay? To understand it, but you understand it in your own language, yes. To understand how to use but, yet, however, yes. Yes, I understand. And okay, we're going overtime here. Blank with last year's profits, the company is not doing very well. Yeah, we got to hurry up, guys. So get your answers in. With last year's profits, the company is not doing well. Yet, I think if I understand the context well, but yeah, a lot of the examples today is not enough context to understand fully, but hopefully in your homework you can get it. Yet, we don't want to start with yet. Yet, okay, we have a comma there. Yet with last year's, no. Whereas with last year's process, no. In contrast, possible. I don't remember what I put. Let's check it out. Yeah, I used in contrast. So there we go. Anna Marie and I, geniuses think alike. So we actually didn't have enough context here. So in contrast with last year's profits, so last year's profits, we had a lot of money. We made a lot of money. In contrast with last year, the company is not doing very well. So in this one, I started the sentence with in contrast. Notice the comma. If you're going to start with a lot of these words, you need that comma. And let's move on. If used, however, it didn't work well because the comma. If you said, however, comma, it wouldn't work well. All right, number 10, the last one here. Many saplings survived the attack, comma, most seedlings had died already. What is your answer? Let's see, whereas many saplings survived the attack, whereas most seedlings had died already. Yeah, whereas looks good. Looks like a good answer. And now you're thinking, what are saplings and seedlings? Because that's very important to your answer. Ramdan, whereas is correct, but you cannot start with a capital W because it's in the middle of a sentence. Many saplings survived the attack. On the contrary, most seedlings had died already. Possible, yeah. Yeah, that's why I put this example. You have to guess. You have to guess without knowing context, without knowing the vocabulary. You got to guess. Layla, and everyone watching, when you take the IELTS test, we're focusing on writing, but in your reading, you are going to see a lot of words you do not understand. All right, get used to it. No, nobody's going to understand all the words on an IELTS test. You could study vocabulary for for 1,000 days. They purposely always try to put vocabulary people do not understand on the test. You have to get used to seeing new vocabulary, not understanding immediately, trying to guess from the context. So, Layla, when you say it's new vocabulary for me, I hope so, because you got to practice how to handle new vocabulary, how to figure it out, what's the grammar. All right, so the answer I put here, just a simple whereas. Many saplings survived this attack, whereas most seedlings had died already. Just as simple. All right, we're going to jump to the homework. There you go. We made it through the 10. If I go back to number 2. As I said, in casual speaking, we would use but, yet, however. Contrast is a little more formal. In contrast, in comparison, more formal. On the other hand, people usually use that expression for speaking. Conversely, it's a little formal. On the contrary, it's formal, but people also speak that. And whereas, you can say that, but again, it's a little formal. They're better for writing. All these can be used in speaking, but a lot of them are a lot of them are formal. So your homework, write some sentences using the new vocabulary in the comment section of this video. So choose whatever you like. Don't do don't do them all. You choose the ones you're having difficulty with. So if it's on the contrary, write 5 sentences using on the contrary. Put it in the comments below this video. Come back tomorrow. I don't know if you could do it immediately. Please check your spelling, grammar, and punctuation before you post. So don't post anything. Don't post spelling mistakes. I will not check it. Don't post things with punctuation mistakes. I will not check it. So I expect high quality homework. High quality homework. I expect to see a lot of examples used on the contrary, and that's my fault. I didn't prepare enough examples. I didn't really think, oh yeah, this is hard to learn. I should have considered that it is hard to learn that one, and more examples were needed. So I apologize for that. All right, that's the end of the stream. This is the longest IELTS stream. So good luck with your homework, and I hope everyone learned something in this lesson. So take care. Bye-bye.